lives.
Jeff will be back shortly to wrap up today's message. This is Gabriela, still on the scene today with Talk Network Radio. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Empowered Living with Jeff Byrd. If you've missed any part of today's message, you can hear it again online, as well as the entire archive of Empowered Living at www.talknetworkradio.com or search keyword #Empowered Living. We would like to acknowledge our music partners, Sound Ideas for Corporate to the Max and Kevin MacLeod for Airport Lounge. Any scriptures read during this broadcast are from the New American Standard Version of the Holy Bible. If you would like to learn more about Jeffrey Byrd Coaching, visit www.jeffbyrdcoaching.com. That is JEFFBYRD coaching.com. Do a Facebook search for @CoachingRocks or drop Jeff a line at jeff@jeffbyrdcoaching.com. Again, JEFFBYRD coaching.com. Let Jeff's Coaching Rocks be the building blocks of your empowered success. Now, let's go back to Jeff for the rest of today's message.
We all know, if you've ever tried to do that, we can never make up for what was lost. We can never go back and make another person go, look at what you did. Look at what you cost me. We can never make up for that. But we can kill ourselves trying to. So many people have suffered a loss in the past, and they spend their lives in the present trying to make up for that. Maybe it was just something as simple as a lost sense of being appreciated. And so they kill themselves in the present trying to do things to get appreciation. Maybe it was a bigger issue, even though that's a big issue in and of itself. But, they're just feeling valued. They didn't feel valued, so they kill themselves in the present to do things to get value versus just going, yeah, that was in the past. Those people didn't value me, but that's not a true statement on my value. I can't change what happened. I can't change them. I can't make them see my worth, see my value, and respond appropriately. And I tell you, if we look to other people to do that, we will be constantly exhausted because nobody else is ever going to value us as highly as we should be valued. Only God can do that, and He has done it. I like to teach, and I teach this often, that I believe I can tell how much anybody values anything, from a watch to a purse, shoes, a car, a house, a vacation. I can tell how much anyone values anything by what they're willing to give up for it. And when I look at God, I can tell how much He values me and how much He values you by what He was willing to give up when He took on a human body in the person of Christ and was willing to go to the cross for us. That's the true statement of value. But we can't expect that from other people. And the more we expect, the more disappointed we'll be. Somebody said one time, if you want to lower your disappointments, lower your expectations. Don't look at somebody to meet all those needs. And especially if you come to somebody and you've got all of these past things going on, these past disappointments, and now you expect that person to be able to fulfill those things and restore that to you. Whoa, you just put a heavy burden on them. You really put a heavy burden on them. And guess what? They're never going to be able to do that. Even if they give you their best, they're not going to be able to make up for what you missed in the past. Right? So you can't make them change. You can't make people see. You can't make the people in the present see. Even the best intentioned people with the clearest vision of your value and worth are going to disappoint you at some point. Right? After all, we are only human. Now, that's a huge thing, but sometimes that's a thing that we don't live up to all that really means. But we can release other people from the expectation and just wow. I'm not constantly striving for their love, for their affirmation, I'm not placing my identity on them. One person pictured this when we do that. He said it's like hanging a very heavy weight from a very, very thin thread. This issue of our identity and our worth, when we place that on how other people respond to us, that's placing a very heavy weight on a very, very thin thread. And that's not a wise thing to do. We need to place our identity and our worth on stronger supports a strong, we need a big old aircraft cable to hang that from, not the thin thread of how somebody else is, because they have their own lives. They got their own problems. They're thinking about their own issues. It's very rare that somebody's so freed from that they can really see us as with the value that we really have. So we need a bigger framework, and that's why God in incredible mercy and grace has stepped into our world to go, listen, I'm going to bring this bigger framework to you. There's nothing in I call it the box of this world and this life. It's like everything that we know is in this little box. And when we try to find something within that box to make us feel secure, to make us feel worthy, valuable, when we try, we're going to be disappointed after disappointment after disappointment. That's why so many addictions are prevalent these days, because we want to escape and just feel better for a moment. That's why there are so many problems and so many people just striving to get somewhere. If I just get to this position, I'll feel like I made it, like I got there. But there is no there. That's why God stepped into this box and he tore the box to shreds. He said, forget about your box. Let me introduce you to a whole new world. It's like stepping outside of your house. If you've ever been inside all day working on something, boy, if you're like me, you can get tired of just being inside, and you just step out, and all of a sudden you were looking at the walls 10 feet in front of you, and you just went outside, and now you can see infinitely far out. You just got a whole bigger paradigm. And that's what we need when we're looking at the people to bring us a sense of fulfillment and worth. It's like being trapped in a little bitty box and being stuck inside all day. And, it's like, we need to walk outside into the real world and see the colors and see the sky and see those clouds soaring up above and the sun shining, and get into that beautiful space. Throw those windows open, pull back those shutters and shades, and walk outdoors and get into the real world that God made. So another thing that I learned from Bishop Tutu is that, and Nelson Mandela as well, is that a value issue is never solved by devaluing another person, even if they devalued you first. Okay, I want to say that again. This is so important. A value issue is never solved by devaluing another person, even if they devalued you first. And this is the message that Nelson Mandela and Bishop Tutu brought to South Africa in the face of horrible atrocities that occurred during apartheid. They were able to not devalue those people who had devalued them first. Nelson Mandela said, that's never going to work. It's never going to work. That never happens. All you end up is with an ongoing war. He said the only way that this value issue ever gets solved is for somebody to take the high road and to value and forgive even those people who devalued them first. There's no war. You can't have a war if you don't have two sides willing to fight. And when you just lay down the arms and say, listen, I know you've devalued me, but I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to try to exact retribution or exact punishment on you. I'm going to lay down those, and I'm going to see value in you, even value that you don't see in yourself. Because I tell you, anybody who's devaluing another person, they don't really see their own value properly either. So we do not solve a value issue by devaluing other people. We have to receive value from outside of the box. And then once we've received, then it can flow through us to others. We can't give what we don't have. We have to receive it, and we cannot demand that from other people. We have to receive that from a source greater than ourselves. And thankfully, God has been abundantly gracious and willing to grant us that, the highest sense of value there could ever be. And the next thing and the last thing that I want to talk about today is the issue of forgiving ourselves. I think of all the people in the world that I've ever had anything to forgive from, I think the most difficult by far has been me. To forgive myself for the small ways I looked at things, for the poor decisions I made, for the time I wasted, for the opportunities I've wasted, for the wrong things I've done towards other people and pain that I've caused them. To be able to forgive myself. So I also, just like towards other people, I have to step down off of that throne of judgment and say, I will not pronounce judgment against you anymore. I have to do the same thing with myself, to step down off of that throne of judgment and say, I will not pronounce judgment against you anymore. This is a very freeing thing. It gives me chills all over just to say it. But we have to, with our own selves and those mistakes we've made, the wrongs that we've done, the things we didn't see and didn't understand, and the poor choices we made as a result, to step down off of that throne of judgment and say to ourselves, I will not pronounce judgment against you anymore. Many of us are familiar with that term, negative self-judgment, and it can go on, that voice of the inner critic that's just always telling us about all the mistakes we made, the opportunities we missed, the wrong things we did, just how bad we are. We need to silence that voice and say, listen, somebody said, the old preacher said, don't let yourself talk to you. You got to talk to yourself. And I think that's so true. We need to say, okay, self, or that voice, I'm not listening to this critical voice, this voice of negative self-judgment anymore. I'm going to listen to the voice of mercy. I'm going to listen to the voice of grace. I'm going to listen to the voice of compassion, and I'm going to adopt it toward myself as well. I'm going to hear it from above, from God and from Christ, but I'm going to adopt that same voice of self-compassion and come down off of that throne of judgment and stop judging myself. Now, this past weekend, my wife and I watched a movie called Rocket Man. It's about the life of Elton John. And there was, and he went through some difficult things. There's some challenging parts of that movie and of his experience. But there was a very, very beautiful scene. And it was when he was in a recovery group. And the scene is he came into the group in all this elaborate, ridiculous costume. And and it was neat because as he would open up, he would take off parts of that costume. It's like the costume was there to hide the real him. And every time he came to a deeper realization and openness about the truth, he would take off part of that costume would come away. So by the time he finally gets to the end, to a point of some healing, he's dressed like a normal person, like the rest of the group, and the costume's gone. But what happens is he, as an adult in this group, sees his younger self come to the center of the group. And he's a young boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old. And he went through a horrible series of rejections from his father. It was just bad. He was so harsh and so cold towards him. But loving, after he left Elton John's family, he went and developed a new family, and Elton ran into him later, and he was just all loving with these new kids. And so that just hurt even more. It's like, wow, he did have the capacity somewhere, but he didn't have it toward me. So here he was, this very wounded, hurt young man, maybe 8 or 9 years old, as portrayed in the movie. And this young boy comes back to now the adult man in the recovery group. And he stands in the center of the group and he says, when are you going to love me? And it's a powerful scene. It's powerful just talking about it. And Elton kneels down and just embraces this younger version of himself that felt so unloved by father and mother and so many others, and went through so much rejection. He said, and finally he's able to say, I love you, that younger version of myself. So there are so many versions of ourselves as we go through life that we've been at. And part of real reconciliation and true forgiveness has to do with coming to terms with each of those. Yes, that's who I was. That was what my experience was. That's how I felt. That's how I acted. And to have compassion on and love that version of ourselves all along. Even though some of us have been to places we'd rather not think about and we'd like to forget, and made decisions we would rather not own, but yet they're there. And when we come to those and say, okay, I'm not going to pronounce judgment against you any longer, with the same love that I've been loved of God, I'm going to love these other versions of myself with that same love, and pronounce forgiveness on myself as well as on all the other people around me. And I'm going to lay down those chains that bind me to them through resentment and through the desire for judgment on them. I'm going to lay down those chains, and I'm going to let them go. And then I'm going to walk away free into a beautiful new day. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Jeff Byrd with Jeffrey Byrd Coaching. This has been Empowered Living. I hope this was a blessing to you. It's been a blessing to me to bring it to you. And until next time, God bless you.